I will allow them to introduce themselves, and they're going to go straight into it. Thank you very much. Just one housekeeping.
I was the program coordinator for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm now emergency officer for the ECA for UNICEF.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Saville Lewis. I'm an employee of CWSA. I'm actually the island supervisor on Union Island for solid waste management.
Hello again. Simon Friedman, WASH Program Manager for Global Support and Development. GSD.
Good afternoon, everyone. Todd Labari. I'm currently the acting production and quality manager at CAWASA, but at the time of burial, I was an engineer attached to the planning and development division. Yeah.
Okay, so good morning. I'm Dan Roy Ballantyne, the head of the Water Resources Department in CWSA. I am a hydrologist.
Hi, good morning again. I am Chimila Raghuber. I am the Quick Disaster Response Specialist. I am going to be moderating this session. I was just made aware of that. So I think it's a good opportunity to learn the lessons from Beryl, from the key players who were there, who went through it through thick and thin with the utilities involved, as well as the country as a whole. So to start the ball rolling, I'd like to hear first from Grenada. So Todd is the manager of plant production, my successor actually. I left the island, unfortunately, before hurricane hit, so I missed out on learning some valuable lessons, so I need to learn them from Todd. Todd, when the storm was approaching, I remember we liaising, we're going through the systems that I tried to put in place over there. Our emergency response plan was the first document that came out. What sort of toolbox meetings did you facilitate when you, in terms of your pre-planning? I want to hear about the pre-planning aspect of preparing for Hurricane Beryl.
So one of the interesting things about Beryl is that Beryl sped up and intensified rather quickly. Not catching us by surprise, but one of the challenges that we had that was alluded to before is that we came out one of the more intense dry seasons over the last 10 years and straight into Hurricane Beryl. So internally we have our disaster management protocols that we enacted, part of which the disaster coordinator and a member of the disaster team, we would have kicked off the things that we do day before, hours before, got all the players on board, as well as to attend the national disaster coordination meetings to give our inputs as to the status of our plants, and as well as to see what sort of coordination there may be between various government, NGOs, statutory bodies, and private sector companies, um, as well as to get updates, the latest updates from the Met Office as it pertains to it and the level of impact that each utility should expect. And post that, we would have responded back to our own disaster teams and put plans in motion from there.
Thank you, Todd. That was good planning. I remember speaking to, I think you told me that when the storm literally passed slightly over Grenada and it went to Carriacou, the people of Carriacou, imagine there's such love in their hearts. This is such a passionate job to be in. The Carriacou people were so worried about Grenada because they said if we are devastated like this, imagine what's happening on the main island. So even though they were homeless, without water, without food, they were worried about the mainland. And that's the level of love that Grenada and their dependents have for each other. So that was preparation one. The reason I started with Todd is because we're taking it in a systematic approach in terms of the path of the hurricane. So I'll move over to Mr. Lewis and Ballantyne. Okay, so who did it affect first before it got to Union Island? It got to, okay, so let's hear from you. What was your pre-planning, so to speak? What sort of preparation took place for you within CWSA when you heard that Beryl you're going to be impacted?
Yes, so I will take this one. On the 28th, 11 p.m., it was Tropical Storm Beryl. And on the 29th, at 5 p.m., it was a Category 1 hurricane. 12 hours after, it was a Category 2 hurricane, and that was at 5 a.m. And then 6.5 hours after, it was a Category 4 hurricane. So I am the liaison really between Met and CWSA. So Met Service, who we have a good relationship with, and I would just say that it's always good to build synergies, with external organization, because there you get the information. And so on the Saturday night, I sent my message. We have a emergency management chat. We have an emergency management meeting on the Sunday. In CWSA, we have a committee, and it's chaired by Engineer Kirby, who is here. But the general manager at that time took responsibility to call the group together. I remember I called him just about 8 a.m. in the morning when I received and say, hey, it looks serious, and this is the information. So at 1 a.m., directly from church, I have to go to the meeting, attend the meeting, and we would have put several things in place. But with the magnitude, with the strength of this hurricane, it was really difficult to have all covered. All right, we ensure that all of the various subcommittees activated, and we have a knowledge of the path, so we know definitely that Union Island will be affected. On Union Island, we don't have potable water, so the only interest we have at that time in Union Island was solid waste. And so we would have contacted Saville. I'm not certain, Mr. Lewis, I'm not certain if he was part of that meeting at that time, but we contacted him and said, hey, put everything in place, ensure that you prepare for this storm, for this hurricane, and we actually for St. Vincent we ensure that the caretakers of the various sources have all of the messages, everything in place in preparation for the hurricane. So this is actually before Beryl.
Okay, yes, we're dealing with the preparatory. So from Nemo, Mr. Stoddard.
Yes, good morning again. And I'm just listening to the colleague on your preparations in Grenada and Mr. Ballantyne. From a national level, we have to take a broader perspective on preparation. So, you know, we were tracking this system late June, and once we got into about the 27, 28, we have to more or less bring the national system into motion. What transpired there is that in communication with the manager of Met Services, the Prime Minister and the director, there will be some conversations, and we determine that this system is of threat to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Mr. Ballantyne indicated the rapid intensification of the system, and as such, we had to do our National Emergency Committee meeting, and that's a policy level group where we would determine direction for preparedness. So we were able to, you know, have a awareness of what is happening in the different sectors, what's happening with water, electricity, and so on. Your manager at the time was present there, and he gave us an indication of your level of preparation, and then we had the operational teams roll out accordingly. So we were able to understand what is happening, where it would impact most, and we worked along with the different agencies to preposition material, whether that would be from a shelter perspective, and whether that would be for supporting the different agencies of government. And of course, Dan Roy and we have a good relationship. I'm in one of the groups, so we'd also monitor water levels and so on, and be able to make decisions together. So we have a good relationship with CWSA, and we always keep in contact with them to understand what is happening, and so we improve our level of preparedness. So that preparatory phase was really about prepositioning, was really about planning national plans, executing the national plans, going through what actions we need for the public, what you should be doing 48 hours before, what you should be doing 36 hours before, and then we institute a shutdown, and then we ask all of those critical services to preposition their teams strategically to respond in the most appropriate and effective manner. And so that's what it is at the national level. It's really that planning, getting persons in motion, understanding what is happening situationally. And of course, we were a bit concerned because, of course, we came out of the drought as well, and we had to support CWSA in the distribution. And Mr. Ballantyne, I don't know if you remember, we had that situation in Georgetown as well, where there was some disruption of the service in the northern section of the island, and we had to provide that level of support. But I think that placed us in a good space to respond when we look at the distribution in the aftermath. So maybe we'd have that conversation later.
Thank you. So there is a level of preparation that the key stakeholders are definitely trained to undertake, and that was commendable. On the sideline, we had entities such as CWWA, CAWASA, UNICEF, GSD looking on, ready and able to respond. Mr. Stoddard, all your communications were fed directly through SEDIMA on the event that would be, you know, the preparatory accommodations for the event
So
incoming.
during the preparatory phase as well, once we were leading up, once we found out that we would be impacted, CDM comes on board. So we have not only local meetings, we have regional meetings through CDMA, facilitated through CDMA. And they would also, as well, preposition staff here to for a surge capacity, increase the surge capacity. So they are very much on board. They help us with the monitoring of the event. They help us with the planning of the event, because one of the things that we have to do is to, to procure whether it be equipment and the likes. And so we were able to preposition that search team. They were able to bring a level of capacity for communication in country and so on. And of course, supported by the UN agencies and other international agencies, were able to put ourselves in a very, what I would say, advantageous position to respond. Of course, not understanding the scale of impact at the time, because St. Vincent and Grenadines have not been impacted by such a system in a number of years. So this was really, really new to us. But, we will put the necessary in place. Yes.
Okay. So the storm hit. It hit slightly north of Grenada, then Carriacou. Todd, once you got word of, communications were down in Carriacou. So your first action was to take a boat, head to Carriacou.
So that was one of the major issues, I would say. And I guess St. Vincent could relate to that as well, the island dynamics. Because the cell towers in Carriacou and in Petit Martinique were down. So we couldn't get any communication out of there. So the response meeting we had with NADMA directly after the hurricane, they would have gone to GM at the time, Engineer Smith, that they would have had the Coast Guard go up early in the morning. But there were so many entities there, but we realized what had happened is a lot of private boaters, because in the region, boating is a major thing, would have fueled up and headed up there. So by 9 o'clock the following morning, I was in Carriacou, and the persons over there were worried for Grenadians, as you said before. But it was a strategic team, various sectors, and it was basically a rapid assessment that was being undertaken. And even throughout, what we had to do, even for our own staff, was to drive physically around the island to see if we could locate anybody. And even more so difficult, we have one of our colleagues here from Petit Martinique, Xavier Rock, who is one of 2 employees on the island. And, congrats to them for really keeping things and managing things as we sought to get transport, because the ferries from Grenada were harboring in Trinidad. And the boats in Carriacou that you usually go to Petit Martinique with, most of them were damaged. So it was almost virtually inaccessible. And so that's one of the things coming out that we built our internal capacity with. We would have procured 8 sat phones that we have as part of our pre-disaster response plan.
Thanks, Todd. So, Simon, at this point in time, Sedima would have been liaising with you, giving you real-time information on what they would have been receiving from NADMA, NEMO, and what was your course of action?
Absolutely. Well, we started communications with Sedima way beforehand. Our information analyst team within GSD was tracking the, tracking the depression while it was still off of the African coast. And as it came across, as my colleague indicated, it was a very rapid development. But we did see that it was most likely going to be impacting the Antilles, so we were pre-positioning. Our communications with Sedima were from the very beginning. So even before there was an impact, they were... Yeah, we were ready to pre-position, and we were trying to get the information from those impact assessments immediately to see who has a request for logistics and what the vessel could bring, because the vessel was north of Antigua at that point. So we were able to start picking up material and bring it down, because there were no other large vessels that were willing to go into the environment immediately.
Thanks. Simultaneously to that, I'd like to hear from UNICEF Ms. Trudeau, what was your course of action whilst monitoring and preparing for Hurricane Beryl?
Sure. So while we were preparing, we of course always recognize the national mechanism. So we were prepping our teams, making sure that supplies were pre-positioned, and then after Beryl hit, I am based here, so have an ongoing working relationship with NEMO and other partners, and then we activated when requested the WASH coordination team. So we kind of followed up in regards after it hit a lot. I would say that within the region, we didn't have a strong, other than emergency WASH sector for the ECA, but I think we have really understand that it really needs to be here both on ongoing services and a response and preparation. So that has been expanding as well as a lesson learned.
And you gave me the perfect segue to introduce Lauren at this juncture, who simultaneously to all of that was undertaking her own pre-planning exercises through CWWA and her specialized network.
Yeah, thank you, Shamila, Madam Facilitator, doing so well. And I must say before I start on that, I'm so glad Ignatius precased it by talking about the drought and the hurricane season closely up. Because as utility, and I'm a utility person as well. I won't tell you how long because then you'll know how old I am. But
as long as me, let me celebrate.
So I think utilities are worried year round because you're worried about drought and you're worried about the rainy season. And even if there's no hurricane, there's flooding. So I was really glad he spoke about the drought because it really was, 2024 was a bad drought year for the Caribbean. But just to give you a bit of context to how the CWWA and CAWASA are involved. So, of course, CDEMA is the unifying agency for anything related to disaster and emergency response. And when there is a disaster or an emergency, the regional response mechanism is triggered. And there are a number of thematic areas under that regional response mechanism. CAWASA, through Ignatius Jean, and CWWA, through myself, we are the co-leads for the WASH, or thematic area 10, I believe it is. And that, of course, everybody in here should know what WASH is: water, sanitation, and hygiene. So it deals with all of that. So what happens is CDEMA would then activate the Development Partners Group, the Caribbean Partners Development Group, or the CDPG. We love an acronym. And that started with the monitoring of Hurricane Beryl coming into the Caribbean. Because as you all would all know, Barbados was also one of the countries that were impacted, but not as badly as the others. So it started with that monitoring, and that monitoring took the form of daily meetings with the CDPG group, which included, of course, it's led by CDEMA, but it included, most importantly, the CIMH. And I can't underscore how important climate products, climate monitoring, weather products and weather monitoring, how important that is, or that it was during this process, because we would get up-to-the-minute, real-time information about the system, and this was done by the CIMH. Of course, it was also attended by the various national disaster management agencies that were projected to be impacted. So at some point, Barbados was there, but really and truly it was NEMO and the NADMA. And of course, CAWASA, CWWA, Quick was also at those meetings, as well as UNICEF and some other partners. So in terms of the monitoring aspect, that is where we were, and we were just ensuring that we were liaising consistently with the disaster response agencies, ensuring that they were, and you just heard them outline what they were, their planning mechanisms, their planning steps were, So it was just really about that and looking at where the storm was headed, what was the impacts, and of course, we were quite concerned because it rapidly progressed, and it rapidly progressed quite early in the season. Are we going straight into the response now, or would you? Yeah. So then, of course, comes the washed response. So in the immediate aftermath of the hurricane, we all have different rules. And what CWWA and CAWASA, the immediate areas we were looking at, would be, of course, I think Todd spoke about it. So there's something called an RNAT, or a Rapid Needs Assessment. And what that does is it informs what is needed by the countries. So it's done by the countries, and it's immediately published and communicated so that they can actually get the response, the assistance, the equipment, the supplies that is required. So in particular, and I must say, Ignatius was such a huge support in that, in terms of identifying persons from across the region that could support with that immediate needs assessment, and going out to both Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines to provide that support. And, you know, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but just to paint the picture, that's 9 o'clock in the night, 12 o'clock midnight, calling utility heads, calling different persons to see if they can spare any of their persons who can, you know, conduct this sort of rapid needs assessment, support the utilities, support the countries, and other personnel, of course, to see if they can support that, and then getting these persons either through the RSS, or I think the Guyana regiment provided support. I think the Trinidad regiment also provided sea support to get persons over. So it's a lot of coordination to get these persons over to the country to support. And then, of course, a needs assessment is published, and, you know, that's where the support comes in. So that was where the focus was. But I also want to touch on one topic that, you know, it's often overlooked, but in order to be able to fully function and to actually go out and perform these immediate assessments that Todd spoke about, you have to be able to drive through the streets. And one of the issues that we faced very early was debris management, mainly on land, but also near shore. So that can impact your ability to respond, because you have to be able to move around. So that was one area that both Ignatius and I also tried to support with, getting persons who could support with debris or solid waste management, so that the responders could actually do their work.
And thank you, Lorraine. On that note, in the absence of my team lead for Quick, Mr. Christopher Husbands, former GM at CAWASA, he gave us a story recently when she was giving him that piece of information, and he said he remembered in Hurricane Ivan, yes, the roads were cleared, but nobody thought about having so many spare tires because of all the nails and the debris that would actually puncture those tires. So the vehicles were null and void during Hurricane Ivan. They needed the trucks and the backhoes to mobilize people, and that was a major lesson learned for him. So
interesting enough, that was the case in Karakou, because the government would have deployed significant vehicles on barges right after. And right after the vehicles came up, new tires had to come up as well. Yeah, because the debris management, the team, there's some heavy equipment operators in Karakou who would have been strategic in clearing the access from the town to the port. But in doing so, there's so many things on the road still. So one of the good things was we were able to drive as we came off the boats to go into the town and move about for the most part. Yeah, but it was at the expense in some instances of tires and so forth. Another thing too that maybe we could touch on when we discuss in education is that when Grenlec did their assessment, they were saying that many of the lines could have been used back if they weren't cut, actually. So yeah, if they weren't cut for passage, but I mean, everybody wants to get access immediately.
So that's
Uh,
a lesson in
and-
coordination.
Right, in coordination as well.
That's a good lesson. So, Mr. Stoddard, we could take down as notes. So, from CWSA, in terms of your response, I want to hear about what because of time constraints, just one major constraint or challenge that you faced in responding after Hurricane Beryl.
All of the islands basically face the same challenges, roadblock, communication down, electricity down. As a matter of fact, after burial, I could not have gotten on to my manager within about 3 days. And that was so because, as I mentioned, everything was down. Bougainville Hotel actually set up a Wi-Fi system, so the persons could come and connect their devices and communicate. But I mean, that was a real challenge because everybody wanted to communicate and the system was cranky.
So one lesson for
That's
you
the
was
big
having satellite phones, maybe? Okay, good. Mr. Ballantyne, anything from you?
Similar to Caracol, the problem is really access, reaching to the Grenadine Islands, not only Union Island, but Myro. Both islands were severely affected. And the islands depend on rainwater harvesting. And with no roof, there's no water. So it therefore means that we have to depend on our external agencies to assist us. And here we have GSD who assisted us, actually first respondent, to provide water for Union Island. In addition to that, we have to think of how we're going to sustain it. And so Water Mission came in and assisted us along with Samaritan First. They provided us with some small desal plant that will enable water supply to the resident. And one of the challenges that we faced is actually the Grenadine Islands. They are not prior. I want to be more skeptical of how I say it. All right, but the Grenadine, they are not accustomed to desal water, even treatment of water. And so the whole concept of desal water was new to them. All right, the resident would complain of belly pains. All right, they would complain of stomach issues. Because
You think that was a mind over matter thing?
I think it's mind over matter because they're accustomed to rainwater harvesting and individual rainwater harvesting.
So lesson learned for
Untreated.
education and awareness from
Yeah.
your PR department in CWSA.
Yeah, so presently we are actually we are improving that aspect, all right, because we are actually providing weekly barging of water, desal water, and they are actually accepting it now, but
Progress.
Yeah.
Okay, so from Nemo, any major challenges when addressing any situations when it came to CWSA in particular that you had?
We had a number of challenges. In the first instance, the rapid needs assessment was not as detailed, as sufficient as we would like would have liked it to be. And so we didn't understand the level of damage to infrastructure. We didn't understand the number of persons who were now displaced, who now required support in terms of water and other humanitarian support. And that's really the importance of that rapid needs assessment. And so we had that challenge. And of course, as time progressed, the cultural issues Mr. Ballantyne spoke to, not familiar with desal water. And there's a thinking for some of those islands use desalinated water, and they've claimed that they've had increase in hypertension and so on. Something that we can't, I'm not sure we could prove at the moment, but
Well,
it's something that we have to keep in mind going forward.
Well, GSD has their onboard testing, right? So we could show the
Yes.
residual chlorine in it and assure them that I don't think hypertension is
Yeah.
due to.
But what I think though, it's a PR issue. It's really about how we educate the public. I mean, we are accustomed to fresh water in Simonson, and we have to think about that going forward because these challenges are going to come again.
So that's why one for
and
the
so we
bu-
had to provide water in bulk to the islands. Of course, Mr. Banton spoke to bulk water. They moved, but we had to move bottled water to the island. And of course, that created another issue in terms of pollution. And so those are some of the challenges. And of course, the cost of moving water from mainland to the Grenadines was really exorbitant. So, we had to spend in excess of $50,000 per trip. And so some of these challenges, you're not aware of, the public isn't aware of, but we have to do this because we have to ensure that, So these are some of the challenges. Really, you want a good size up. You really want to understand what is happening on the islands. We couldn't do that because of the communication issue. We were cut off for 2 days. And we thought that we just installed an emergency communication network that we thought was really robust, and it went. All right, so we weren't able to see anything. We couldn't do our assessments because we couldn't get persons on the island. The seas were really rough, and so that delayed our response, even though we had the support from the regional agencies. So all of that, we need to have a better understanding and do a bit more of the planning prior, more of the prepositioning. And I think that has a bearing on our analysis of the system. So in the first instance, it appeared as if it was south, and then there was some movement a bit northwards. And so once we have that, jigsaw movement of the system, you're not really sure where to put the resources. So from Sedema's end, they would like to know where exactly are we impacting. And so we need to also improve our forecasting as well, so for us to understand where these systems are going to be. And once we have a very good understanding, once we have a good confidence in the data, we could now say, okay, let's preposition accordingly and make the necessary decisions.
Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Trudeau, anything to add in terms of a major challenge that stood out at you during that process?
Sure. I would say just in regards to coordination. So as WASH coordinator, I think in this particular case, what we didn't consider was the multiple island impact. And I think when you have a multiple island impact, you're not just coordinating for one response, you're coordinating, you need to have a different response for each and every location that was impacted. And I think that added, so for in St. Vincent, that multiplies the response by 5. And you're looking at trying to coordinate services in places that don't have services because there was an existing water supply network there. There was a few staff. So how do you really coordinate when you need to get people in different places? So like for instance, at the beginning, I think I went on the first day the boat could go. Even logistically, it's a 4-hour sail down. It was enough to be able to get supplies, see Clifton. You still weren't able to see some of the other parts of the island, and another 4 or 5 hours back to be able to respond, but you only had like a short window, and that's just for one of the islands. So I would say coordination on this side, having it be a multi-island, and I'm sure Grenada had similar, was just amplified.
So, Simon, in your call to action, was there any major challenge apart from the ones that have been mentioned already that stood out at you?
I wouldn't say that there were major challenges. I would say once we were given the go from Sedima as well as from St. Vincent to enter into union, I think things moved relatively smoothly. The coordination was very good. I think it's been mentioned enough that we've matured a lot in 1 year, and I think that will pay dividends as we have to go into other incidents like this. But there was no major challenge that retarded the progress that GSD could make.
Thanks. Todd, you want to mention anything on that in terms of any additional challenges to what has been mentioned before for Carriacou?
Well, most of them, as mentioned, is logistics. We were affected by that as well. But because we have, to varying degrees, infrastructure for desal operations in Carriacou and PT Martinique, our challenges were mainly getting our system up and running. So in PT Martinique, I think we got up and running about a month after. And the good thing with PT Martinique is that the distribution network covers the entire island. So as soon as we were able to get the plant up and running, and persons in PT Martinique are fairly accustomed to the desalinated water and the pressurized system. So I'll probably just interject here and say to you that the culture can shift. We have seen it shifting. It's even shifting in Carriacou as well as we begin to emerge there. But yeah, so it was basically getting our systems up and running. And as I said, logistics, because we have backup generators in Carriacou and PT Martinique, but we had to boat fuel from island to island every day to keep the plants operating. Carriacou had some good internal coordination, so there's a series of private truckers there. So although our distribution network is not as extended and covers the entire island as yet, the government was able to utilize the private truckers and the truck that we got from BWA through Sedima as well, to assist a lot of the shelters and the government agencies as they got themselves, through CAWASA, right? So we were able to help and assist in the recovery process. So I would say those were the challenges. One major one that we would have noticed that we want to identify as something that we do to increase capacity going forward is that ports on these islands have to begin to develop themselves to receiving bulk water. So you get the barge come in with hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. What storage systems, what conveyance systems we have so that we could store it. Because as a region, we're closely clustered, and if a hurricane hits, it affects multiple of us. And having to go from location to location, time is definitely of the essence. So that's one major one I would say going forward, the ability to receive bulk water.
Excellent. Lorraine, any major challenge in trying to mobilize resources from CWWE's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we always have challenges. I think they were, most of them were raised quite well, but if I may, you'll allow me a little latitude here. I'd actually like to just make two quick recommendations and actually speak quickly about the process that was adopted and should continue. So I can't underscore enough how much the asset register for your utility is important as part of your planning process. What you don't want to be doing, and Todd does not want to be doing, is scrambling to get specs for whatever they need, as part of the response and the assistance. So, it is part of the quick, they ask for proper comprehensive asset register, and it is built into one of the supporting mechanisms for quick, which is the H2 bid. So, it really is important, an integral part of the planning process. Also, I know that many countries provide support and a lot of entities within that country provide support. I also can't underscore enough that any support you're providing, first of all, must align with the needs assessment, because what you're going to do, if you just take it upon yourself to send persons or send items, it becomes a problem for the country to deal with if they don't really need it. So what the agencies you're supposed to be responding or liaising with is CDMA or the National Disaster Response Agency. And that leads me to my final point. We had what I observed as an excellent working process and system in Beryl, where there were meetings every day with a member of the disaster response agency, both at NEMO and at NADMA, that included, because we of course were focusing on the water and sanitation response, as well as the utilities and the UNICEF representatives there. Of course, myself and Ignatius were not on site, but it really helped with the immediate communication, and of course Sedimo. It really helped with the immediate communication of what was required in terms of simple things that may be overlooked. There was a mosquito issue, so what we started to do is, and it wasn't on the needs list, so we started to include mosquito repellent, simple things, but required. There was a call for proper, they were distributing water, as you heard, but the the population needed a way to utilize it. So it was through buckets, but we got spigot buckets manufactured in Trinidad with support from BWSL, financing from BWSL to send over those things. So I think, these are very small examples, but it was actually the process at those daily meetings with, Todd Terrence was in the meeting with the UNICEF representative. It really helped informed the persons, the actors, on what was needed in a real-time way and the best way to do it.
Thank you. So limited time again, but I want to thank everyone and give you all a round of applause, because I think everyone here learned something today about your experience during Hurricane Beryl. We want to open the floor for just a couple questions. Yeah. Mr. Smith?
No, sorry. Oh, Smith. Sorry. My apologies.
Yeah, excellent discussion. So let me just comment, perhaps add value to the discussion. One of the, what I would call big picture, I thought Todd would raise it, but you can't raise everything. One of the lessons coming out of Karaoke, and PM, was the link, and our colleagues at UNICEF, we drew it to their attention, the link between in a country that depends largely on rainwater harvesting, roof catchment rainwater harvesting for residential water consumption. The absence of a roof after a hurricane means there is no means of collecting water, one. Secondly, if your roof blows off and it leaves the roof structure, the rafters in place, as sometimes happens, timber is pressure treated with chemicals for termite control. These chemicals are toxic. If your rafter is still on, when it rains, it's going to rain sometime after the hurricane. Where does that water go? As we know, as most of us know in the Grenadines, houses are built with a large cistern, sometimes which is the entire footprint of the house, or a significant part of it. That cistern must have some kind of manhole. When the rain falls, there is a risk of contamination of the water. Now, people have in Carriacou, I'm sure it is in the Grenadines, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 15,000 gallons of storage. Often households have rainwater that can carry them right through a dry season. When the rain falls, where does that water go? Householders are aware that they have to ensure that every effort needs to be made for that water, wherever it goes, not through, you have a manhole cover, at least one, to be able to access. Yeah? So the lack of a roof, there's no means of collecting water, rain is going to fall, there was a risk of contamination. So one of the issues that we interface with the Ministry of Health, there's another perhaps shortcoming that Todd has mentioned. There needs to be a strengthened link between the water utility and the Ministry of Health, because there were reports of increased waterborne diseases in Carriacou. And the support agencies, I believe including UNICEF, but correct me if I'm wrong, were sending chlorine tablets to Carriacou. Now, what does a householder who depends on rainwater in a cistern do with chlorine tablets, when traditionally that water is not chlorinated, right? And in Carriacou, I believe in PM2, they have little fish, right, as part of the traditional treatment system. They eat any mosquito larvae that find themselves there. If you throw chlorine tablets in there, what are you going to do?
Kill the fish.
You're creating another problem. So you have to be careful.
I think that's a nice lesson.
By sending
for
chlorine,
PR,
what is the chlorine going
educate
to be used for?
Away.
Right? So I just thought I would highlight the link between the lack of a roof to collect rainwater, the link between that and wash. Because if people don't have water for personal hygiene, you're going to have wash issues. So I just, let me just say, it would be remiss of me. I think when the history of this Hurricane Beryl is written, Mr. Jean and CAWASA, well, CWWA too, but must have a chapter for themselves. Let me just endorse and give more kudos to Mr. Jean. Because when I spoke to him a day or two after the hurricane and he asked, what can we do? And I said, boy, we need some tankers because we have a serious problem. He was instrumental. Within the hurricane was Monday. By Friday of that week, there was a water tanker on a barge, happened to be in Grenada, a solution firm that was working in Grenada. And through CAWASA, they were able to mobilize. And we ended up getting not one, but two, a second one from BWA. So we ended up with 2 trucks in Carriacou. And you cannot underscore the importance of this kind of collaboration. And final point very quickly that hasn't been mentioned. How should I say this? The psychosocial needs of your staff is an area. Now, I have on my phone a video of Mr. Xavier Rock seated right there that was made the morning of the hurricane. And you know what I'm talking about? Todd, Jamila would know. When I saw that little 30-second clip, right, it brought tears to my eyes. Because, now he wouldn't be aware, he would not have been aware of it, but the despair in his voice, in his face, he was saying, we've lost everything and I don't know what to do. Yeah? And we made some efforts to get a psychologist up there. I don't think finally we ever did. But I find that that is an area that is not really emphasized because you're dealing with people who have needs. They all lost their roofs.
Counseling.
And so forth. The counseling and so forth for our utilities or anybody for that matter is something that I think should be added into the mix. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that, Mr. Smith. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Simon.
As I said earlier, don't hesitate to request to GSD. We have a very strong psychological first aid program. When we were in Dominica a couple years ago, speaking with DeWasco, we were asking what they could use, and that was the first thing they said, was people are still harboring the wounds from Irma. So it's acknowledged, and please, I'm sorry, Maria, yeah, it's acknowledged, and we would like to be able to assist where we can. So please reach out to us for that.
Thank
Then,
you,
as far as
GSD.
the wash discussion goes, I think this is where we could start implementing some training for the operators. Operators are trained to do big water, and in times of disaster, we start working at a household level and getting operators and the people on the ground who are used to working out in the open trained up on how to teach people to use household water treatment or point of use water treatment. You can actually start using the water that still exists in your water tanks, but you can use it in a safe manner.
Thank you.
So
Todd?
just to, back to the first point, yeah, definitely coming out of the response and recovery performance initiative that we had, it was discussed that there needs to be more collaboration between the Ministry of Health and us. But what we saw coming out, there was some lessons being learned and updated in the process. So what persons would have started doing after that spike in the waterborne diseases, they would realize now that we had a lot of 5-liter jugs coming in. And between the ministry and the donor agencies, there was a bit of education. Pamphlets were being given. So the persons knew that you don't try to disinfect your entire tank, because most persons don't know the volume, but they would have extracted a fixed amount to use with a tablet that disinfects a particular size. So there was a bit of education on the fly and adjustments to what was being given as well.
Lessons on the go. Appreciate it, Todd. We have one more question. Candice?
Yeah, me being me, right? I'm going to ask a very strange question. In the process, in the pre-planning process, and we're looking at lessons learned, and because of the area of the world that we live in, there's a possibility of this happening again. Have we actively and meaningfully inserted IWRM into the disaster planning space as we have this discussion? Because I was listening to several speakers, make their contributions, and it seems as though we circling near IWRM, but for some reason we may not necessarily be actively and meaningfully pursuing it.
Lauren?
Yeah. So, that's a really great point, and I know Karen is here. Karen, where are you? There you are. So, a few years ago, maybe two was it, Karen? Through CAFA and the OECS Commission, there was an initial launch of an integrated water resources management action framework. And I think you all started with 12 countries, and then it was expanded to 19. So I will let you all know that there is an action framework for integrated water resources management at the country level for 19 countries in the region. It's just for you all to adopt and utilize. So it's up to me. It's up to the countries now. The ball is in your court. A lot of the work has been done in terms of providing a framework approach to do that. And Candice, it's a really important point, both from a wet and a dry season. So I know the countries. I'm not sure if the disaster agencies want to respond on that, but we are here to support both CWWA, CAWASA, and GWPC that has done a lot of work in terms of IWRM in the region.
Thank you. Unfortunately, my boss is telling me we need to do a hard stop, and we do apologize that we can't take more questions now, but feel free to speak to the key stakeholders after this session. We want to thank you all again. Great discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone, all the participants, and for your own engagement. I mean, this is a topic that can continue for the rest of the afternoon. It's very, very deep. But following up immediately from that, we must catch up on time. So I'm going to invite John Wright of the Kate to Dine group to present to us on something that we're going to witness after lunch. Just talking about water and so on in emergency situations. Over to you, John.
You're reading my mind, brother. Set timer, 20 minutes. So, welcome. Hi, I'm John. I'm from Catadyne. We're a private sector company. Our business.
I'll get your mic.
What we do is we make portable reverse osmosis solutions specifically for disaster relief, for military, and for emergency backup infrastructure. Thank you. Let's see, that's not my presentation. Catadyne. There you go. Thank you. So while we're bringing up the presentation, yep, we've been here with you. Many of the last hurricanes, we've had Catadyne solutions deployed in the region making water. We've been inserted with our NGO partners. So one of the things about this particular company is that, yeah, we're private sector, but we are focused on sustaining life. And so very unusual in this community of corporate organizations. It makes it possible for me to deploy with my NGO partners. And so I have a history now of deploying with my partners in the worst disasters over the last 6-7 years. So I guess we go back to Irma, Dorian, Beryl, Maria, Caroline, the earthquake in Haiti, many more where we've either been the boots on the ground with our NGO partners or we have supported them from a distance. And so we have some takeaways that we've learned along the way. This was Green Turtle Key, and again, that kind of brings it right back to where where we're actually at the point of providing drinking water for people using, in my opinion, the best water source for disaster relief, which is Caribbean seawater. Yeah, it's some quick pictures from North Carolina last fall, Hurricane Helene. And this is a situation where the roads in this region, they follow the rivers. And underneath the roads, water infrastructure. And when the roads were gone and the water infrastructure was flushed downstream into another state, what remains is the inability to get relief resources into the region, the inability to produce water, and fairly extreme need for water. And so pretty relevant situation. It's not Caribbean, but the equation is the same. What do we do when infrastructure is gone? And so yet again, they put me on a bird with an NGO team, and we flew into a disaster zone to make water for folks. And I got to say, I had a moment where I realized that the work that we've been doing over the last years, flying in after a disaster, is really cool, but it's not the solution. We can't produce enough water with one NGO flying into a community. As we were flying in, we flew over 4 communities that did not have water and did not have access. There was no backup for them. And that's where my view of the disaster relief solution changed dramatically to one of where we provide services after, to one of where we work with our partners locally to have resources in place to serve people in need. We've talked about that already. Plastics is not the solution, but having a pre-position of gear, of trained operators in the region, that's the solution that we think works. So here's 2 pre-positions. One's in Tampa, Florida. You can see the water maker units there and a pallet full of resources. That's all we need. That's all we need. You fly us into anywhere. Those two birds there took us to Abaco, and our friends at GSD put us on Green Turtle Key. That is a solution where the resources are there already, and we can get there quickly, and we can provide water using any water source. The Barbados Defense Forces operates a pre-position of 5 smaller aquifers. They're always there. They're always ready to deploy. We've trained with them many times. It gives me great joy that we have that as a business model, well, an operations model for future disasters. Yeah, one of the interesting scenarios in this business is that you usually have 3 different types of water sources. And the first one is fresh water. And so you can see how the turbidity is loaded there as water is coming off the dry land and coming into the river, all of the contaminants with it. You have a very, very highly contaminated, very high TDS, high suspended solids. You can still make water out of it. And then you have the brackish solution as that fresh water flows into salt water. You have brackish water, also very contaminated. And the last one that's always overlooked, that is Caribbean seawater. Crystal clear Caribbean seawater. We can make water with that for months because it's so clear. And if you could choose any one of these water sources for a temporary water infrastructure, which would you choose? Caribbean seawater. And you know what? Our solutions will work in any one of these. It's reverse osmosis. So if there are contaminants, we got it. We'll get it out, right? If it is brackish, if the TDS is changing on you, our technology works well. Guys that are operators, you don't have to adjust pressures for TDS. The system does that. So what we suggest is that's your water point. Right in the clearest water on the planet. You have to remove the salt, but if you do that, you can operate for months. So quick note, in Green Turtle Key, we operated our systems with a disposable 5-micron pre-filter to remove turbidity. Those pre-filters lasted for 5 days at 1,000 gallons a day. Love that Caribbean seawater. So this is the solution that we make now. It's a little bit bigger than those black boxes. This is 4,000 gallons a day. That's 16 cubic meters per day in just 3 cases. 2 blue cases and a duffel bag. The duffel bag is mesh so that the lines can dry out. So this is a large volume solution, again at 16 cubic meters. It is highly portable. These are designed to be person portable. I can put this in the back of our rental car here, and any car, it'll fit. Human portability is essential for disaster response and preparedness. We don't have forklifts. We don't have lift gates. We don't have docks where we can dock this and then get it to where it needs to be. And this is part of our technology, our IP. We have a pump that is very light and very small, and that's what makes it portable. For the record, we don't go any bigger than 10,000 gallons a day. Our technology works well at smaller scales. We're not here to sell you on a 50 million cubic meters a day system. We only make these small systems. 2 cases in a bag, it's 198 pounds or less. Energy efficiency is built into our technology. It's 2.6 watts per liter. I don't really have any competitors that can do that. 2.6 watts per liter. And that again is small scale. Yeah, we dropped this thing about 20 times to make sure that after it's dropped and after it's been abused and maybe fell off a truck, that it still operates. So these systems are designed to be very robust. Yeah, simple operation. Doesn't take much to learn how to operate them. And it's a universal solution, so you don't need to know what the water conditions are. The truth is we never know, not until we get there. And even then, we're not testing every gallon of intake water, are we? So using the highest rung of water purity with reverse osmosis makes sense for disaster preparedness. Some of our deployments along the way, here's Florence and Dorian and Laura and Tinian and Irma. Here's Hurricane Iota. We deployed to every one of them. We operated systems in every one of them. For Columbia in Iota, we were there for 6 months, or at least our systems were there for 6 months. My boss is calling me, hey, when are you coming back? So we were there for 6 months, training local operators to operate them. Proof of concept, so this is an OCHA document that came out after Dorian. And you can see on Green Turtle where we were, and Abaco where we had other systems. This organization, World Hope International, operated about 5 of our water makers, our smaller water makers. They had a capacity of about 1,000 gallons a day. And they were there for, again, 6 months. But when they did an evaluation of who provided the most water, look at that, it's World Hope. It's partly because we were there first. It's partly because we stayed there for 6 months. It's partly because we had Caribbean seawater as our water source. And but the rest of them were there. They were doing the job. But that technology seems to indicate that it's well suited to this situation. So yeah, that's 4,000 gallons truck. So according to the WHO standard, we can serve between 5,000 people a day and 1,000, depending on how much water in which protocol you're looking at. So the advantages. This technology, again, is a little bit different. It is the highest output, the highest product water solution available in the marketplace that is human portable. Again, no forklift. It's the lowest weight in the class. It's the lowest energy consumption in the class. And there's a cost to these things. I'm going to share that with you because I know you've been looking at this for a while and I know it's on your mind. But essentially, these come in around $45,000 US per piece, and that's with the CAWASA, I don't know, discounts, whatever. We make them available at that price. There is a lead time on these of about 8 weeks. So it doesn't work to wait for the hurricane, as we've been talking about. It doesn't wait. You can't wait for it and then order it. We have to do this proactively to have it in season, in where it needs to be. Some of our partners, World Central Kitchens was here in the Grenadines with one of our systems during Beryl. Give Power is an ongoing user of our technology. UNICEF has our 4,000 systems in the Middle East right now. There's World Hope International. Samaritan's Purse operates desalinators, all of which use our technology. IFRC in the South Pacific. Médecins Sans Frontières, these are all our partners that have figured out that the technology lends itself well to this particular application. This is the IP. This is what differentiates us. We make this pump ourselves. We designed it. We've perfected it. We started in 2008. You can see how small it is. That's a cat drive on it. And that's what makes it light. That's what makes it portable. That's what makes it energy efficient, all of which lend itself well to disaster relief. This is Providencia and Santa Catalina in Colombia after Hurricane Iota. Again, energy recovery. These are energy recovery devices. That's why it's only 2.6 watts per liter. There's a fixed recovery ratio. So if your TDS varies, you're going to get the same amount of water. It's fixed. There's no adjusting for pressure. So all you operators who know about RO and adjusting pressures for TDS, you don't have to do that. And by the way, it's not an electronic device that adjusts. It's hardwired into the pump itself. It's the porting. It's the size of the ports. That's what regulates our pressure. Small scale, obviously, and sustainable for life systems. Those units that you see there have over a year of runtime in disaster zones, and more now. So here's the basic setup. We'll see that this afternoon. Here's some of the diagrams that we send with our systems so people can see how to make connections. Here's the controller box that gives you some protections from environment, from overload, from heat, from short circuits. It guards the system for you. And that generator that's second from the right, that's what you need to operate this system. That's a 3.5 kilowatt generator, 240 volt. So you can see how the energy efficiency works. It would be typical at 4,000 gallons a day to need a wheel-mounted diesel generator to operate that system. We can do it with 3.5 kilowatts of any generator. We've talked about that. This is Barbados. This is one of our trainings. And yeah, this is one of the essential things that we're here to offer, is that we want to partner with you. We want to be here with you once a year training. We want to walk through this with you, let you set it up, remind yourself how it goes together, remind yourself how the system operates. So this is Barbados training on their 5 smaller aquifers. This was last year. There might even be a familiar face in there, guy from GSD. These are some of the other trainings that we've done all over the world. So St. George Island in Florida, Halifax, Providencia. You can see those are local operators in Providencia. And then Florida again. What comes next is a more permanent solution, not the absolute permanent solution, but at least one that will get you through the first couple of years until new infrastructure can be installed. So this is one of our frame systems, not portable, but it is still energy efficient, and that will do 10,000 gallons a day. We have other solutions. Water filters is one of them. We have food solutions, and that is it. Now, we will have a demo here coming up shortly, but I got 3 minutes to spare. So hit me with your questions.
I guess we'll see this in the demonstration, but I'm just wondering, where does the reject go?
Yeah. Okay, so reject water is one of the big questions we always get. First, this is a 50% recovery system, and you're probably accustomed to 75 or higher. And so the brine concentration is about 25% less than what's typical with stationary reverse osmosis. That means the brine concentration that you return is much lower and much less toxic. Furthermore, we don't add anything. There's no chemicals here. Anything that we put into the water is what came out of the water, right? A little higher concentration, but eventually any water we take out, it's going right back into the same place. So there are some efficiencies from our system being a lower recovery technology.
A quick question, if you said it, and my apologies if I missed it, the production rates that you cite for the different small volume units.
Yep.
That is based on how many hours per day operation?
Yeah. So everything, I mean, we follow the industry standard of 24 hours of operation. And I would adjust that a little bit further. It's a really good idea to operate 22 hours for a day and not 24. So you can do the math and back it off a little bit, but we need that rest. We need that operator to get some rest. We need the system to equalize a little bit, maybe check the pre-filters. So there's about 2 hours a day that we suggest that you're maintaining or resting to sustain the system over a longer period of time. Yeah. Well, mechanically, the system is fully able to operate 22 hours a day. Now, if you're an operator in a disaster zone, 22 hours of operation is sustainable for about 3 days. And then you need to have backup come in. Yeah. And I think I need to answer your question one step further, and that is that we suggest you return it to the water table. Yep. Yep.
So if that reject is going back to the sea.
Yep, that is one great scenario. You can find a beach well or make a beach well if you need to, so that you don't have a lot of standing water lying around, which we all know is something we don't want. But you can either return it right to the ocean, or you can return it to a beach well, or you can pool it and allow it to Yeah, thanks.
Yes, good evening. Following up on Mr. Smith's question here, on runtime, I was looking at more maintenance, because in the Caribbean, are we maintaining every 100 hours, every 1,000 hours, because of the frequency of hurricanes that could happen here? And if we working with CDMA, CDMA, or these different places, how often should these be service maintained? Are they being done by you all? You're training us to do it? What are the, besides the item, what are the consumables would be required for the operation?
Right. I love you guys. You guys speak Desalinese. And so you're accustomed to operating complex mechanical systems, and that's what these are. Any salesperson who tells you you can set it and forget it is just that, a salesperson. These systems do require some training, and they do require people who understand how to operate mechanical systems. And so the first maintenance interval is at 2,500 hours. And so that should get you, roughly 6 months of operation if you're operating during light hours, okay? You're probably not gonna have to do a deep dive in any disaster deployment, a deep dive on maintenance. The next maintenance interval is at 10,000 hours, and that is a deep dive. That's one where we pull it out, we ship it to somebody who knows how to do this, and get it back to you ready to go. Regarding consumables, we have a 5-micron pre-filter that we use to remove remove suspended solids that could be abrasive to the O-rings in our system. So in Caribbean seawater, you're not gonna need a lot of those. It's pretty sustainable. In really bad water, like if it was that freshwater river, you probably get about 4 hours. And then you're gonna have to flush that pre-filter out a little bit, dry it in the sun, and hope that it can still move some water. So our systems, we deploy them with multiple pre-filters for every deployment, and then we train our operators to sustain them as carefully as you can. There is storage chemicals that we use to preserve the wet membrane that is, in a warm storage somewhere that probably will have growth. And so we have a pickling solution that's a dry powder that you can use to sustain these. We do that twice a year. If it isn't running in the field, we do that twice a year. And that's it for consumables. Let's see. Carbon packs, yeah. Yeah, there's a place for that. As a pre-filter, it might make sense to use carbon to remove some of the contaminants. Like, for example, there's a few things that membranes don't like, which you could all answer this question. Chlorine. Membranes don't like chlorine. They'll take it out, but the chlorine will eventually damage the membrane. It will soften the bonds. 2 is oil. Membranes don't like oil. We have to remove the oil or move to another location is the easier path there. Move to a different location. If there's an oil slick that blows in, and there is always an oil slick that blows in, we either drop the intake pump deeper or we remove it until the oil slick blows by. So carbon has a place, but remember this is reverse osmosis, so it's going to remove all the contaminants that carbon would. So carbon might serve us as a pre-filter, especially for chlorine, but as a product water solution, you don't need to add carbon.
A question.
Yeah.
As far as power source, because I know everybody's going green, and it may or may not be applicable for a disaster scenario. Any alternative power source to run the machine?
Yeah, so the technology being as energy efficient as it is, again, we recycle the pressure. We don't dump the pressure through the reject line, we recycle it. That pressure comes in behind the piston to support the piston through the process. And so we're recovering pressure that we've already made using energy, and so we're just that much more energy efficient. So it's a kilowatt, a generator of 3.5 kilowatts will sustain this particular system easily. It doesn't have any spikes, whereas that would be typical with conventional RO. Our system uses VFDs, and we power up slowly, and so it's going to take about 2.5 or 2.6 watts. Kilowatts to consistently operate it. But a 3.5 is there because everyone's charging their phone.
Thank you. Just before you leave the room, let me just do a little housekeeping and to tell you that the next session is going to be lunch. And after lunch, we're going to have the demonstration by John and his team down on the waterfront. So what we're going to do after lunch, I mean, you could, I guess, put your bags away. We're going to walk along the beach on the boardwalk. And I think the demo is going to take place near the mangoes. Somebody will lead us there. Thereafter, we will return to the parking lot here for the buses that will take us to Arnorsville, to the CWSA site for the water operators competition. So those of you taking part in the competition, you know you're going to come with your gear. Yeah, we would like to know who's going on to the competition so that we can finalize arrangements with transportation. Show of hands, Suzanne. Look like everybody's going. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, Suzanne Suzanne, you will check with Suzanne. The other thing is very important, pay attention please. Thank you very much. We want to know, as we prepare for the next CAWASA conference, how well did we do? And of course I have to report to my boss and to some of my sponsors as part of it. So you're going to scan this QR code, and it has the questionnaire for evaluation. There's an evaluation form. Please submit those to us. Very important. We have a field trip tomorrow as well. Some of you may be leaving before that. So please do scan this QR code. I have tried to circulate it in some of the groups. But please do. It's up. And I hope you have found the conference so far to be educational and satisfying, and met most of the objectives we set out to have. We're now going to go to lunch. Yes? Yeah. Also, if you're going to go to the field trip tomorrow, those of you who are going to the field trip, please register with Suzanne so that we can know the numbers so we can make arrangements for transportation. Okay? Thank you very much.